What is grimdark? Because I say it a lot in this video. I'm recording this after recording the video, and I'm realizing, do I even know what grimdark is? I thought it was like spooky, dark, gritty, violent. I know it's like a Warhammer thing, a grimdark future Warhammer. I know that. Feel like there's like industrial grimdark. Does just it being rusty and kind of abandoned make it grimdark? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I say grimdark so much in this video, so please forgive me if I have the definition entirely wrong. Please educate me. I need to know. Welcome back to JunkDrawer Studio. Today we're making this cool industrial tank as a part of this industrial grimdark factory building that I made recently. These types of tanks are a ubiquitous part of any industrial grimdark setting for tabletop RPGs, war games, skirmish games, or even just a badass grimdark diorama. They're also just really cool and fun to make. If you want to see how I made this full build, well, good news, the video is already out. I posted it just last week, so if you've already seen it, thank you. If not, it's linked somewhere on the screen here and in the description below. Give that a watch first if you want the broader context of this build, or watch it second because I can't tell you what to do and the order doesn't really matter. But either way, you should watch it because it's very good. Without further ado, it's tank time. That sounded cooler in my head. I started this build in the way that I do often when I make tanks, which is with a giant bottle of ibuprofen or any sort of medicine that you've used all of. I then took out a big acrylic tray and went over to my bits boxes and collected all the little things I thought I could possibly use to plus up this tank. This is my newest addition to the bit boxes, these cheap plastic hair curlers. I bought them on Amazon and I see a lot of people using these for industrial terrain. In this build, I cut strips of them and used them as ladders on the tank, but I've seen them used as cages or sci-fi fencing. I also have all sorts of cables, hair ties, zip ties, these random plastic things. I think the one on the right is from a toy, the one on the left is from some packaging. Beer can tab thingies. My husband works at a brewery and gets so many of these, and they are so good for sci-fi terrain. I use them for all sorts of things. I have like 1,000. I also have random bits of toys that I've collected over the years from thrift stores. This is a set of really cheap sprue from this like little robotics kit. This has so many useful little parts and bits, and I've gotten a lot of use out of these over the years. I even like the little like extra bits of sprue with the numbers on them. I have some window screen. I have no idea how that got wet. I also have this box of plastic tubes. You can get these from Amazon. A lot of crafters use these. They're absolutely perfect for grimdark, industrial, sci-fi type of builds. They fit together really well. They sand and paint up really nice, and you can make all sorts of configurations with them. Here I am just kind of dry fitting all the parts together to kind of just see what looks good. I do start gluing them eventually, obviously, but I wanted to just get a feel for all the little parts that I was working with. And then I just start gluing them on. My philosophy is like, does it look cool? Glue it on. It sounds like an elementary approach, but I think it's really successful. No one's worried about the realism of these types of things. I just glued everything up with some super glue and baking soda. I've mentioned this before, but baking soda just helps speed up the cure on super glue. I don't always like to do it because it leaves a kind of crusty effect behind, but it actually adds a nice texture when you know you're going to be doing something with rust. I love this part of building. I love finding all the little bits. This little one that I found here, I was obsessed with. It just is the perfect little scale vent type of thing. A lot of the bits you're seeing here fall into two categories. They're either old toys that I kind of scavenged from thrift shops and just broke apart, or any random piece of plastic that I've ever come across ever, like the bread tabs. Some might call my collection a junk drawer. These little rubber tubey things were from a toy. They were really hard to glue down, but they ended up looking awesome in the end. I also used some EVA foam to add even some more paneling to the backside. I mostly focused on this front part because that is the part that's going to be visible, as you can see here as I put it up next to the building. Again, if you skipped my intro and want to see how I made this full building, click the link below to watch my last video from last week to see that build. And here it is, nearly complete. Just take your time with this, go through all your bits. This little wheel was such a good find. I love how this looks up there. You can really make something interesting if you just take your time and get a little creative. If you did use baking soda, I recommend using a dry brush to kind of just get all of that baking soda extra dust out of the build before you paint. Last thing, before I painted, I took these rivets that I got at Joann Fabrics when they were going out of business. I also have some, wait, what are those? Don't know how those got there. Anyway, heading rivets is very time consuming, but very rewarding. I can't help but think of Bill making stuff when I put on rivets, and I always wonder how long it takes for him to film his rivet sequences. If you know, you know. Not only does he put on so many more rivets than I ever have, but he does these really impressive stop motion sequences. I highly recommend checking out one of his builds so you can see what the heck I'm talking about. But yeah, I just slapped these over everywhere. They're a little big for the scale, but I feel like they do look like big industrial bolts, and that's okay in the context of this setting. I scored the EVA foam a little bit to add even a little bit more detail. I was beginning to feel like the panel I had originally glued on was just a little too big and plain and boring. This just adds a lot of visual interest and allows for the weathering later to really pop. And here's the tank next to the building. It's really shaping up. I added this pipe to kind of go into the building once I glue it all up at the end. Looking good. I'm interrupting your regularly scheduled programming for a new segment that I like to call the question of the video. Bet you can't figure out what the segment is about. For real though, I want to get to know my audience, so I thought it would be fun to have a question every video that you guys can answer in the comments below. Today's question is, what do you do? And no, I'm not asking anyone to dox themselves and tell me your job and where you work. What I want to know is, which category do you fall into? Are you watching these videos because you're a DM or otherwise crafty person who likes to make things for your games like terrain or dioramas or anything like that? Are you a crafter? Or do you just like to play these games, like to play Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, any sort of war game, skirmish game, board games, but you're not much of a crafter and you just still like watching these videos? Or third category, do you have nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, crafting, and you just straight up like watching this type of content? I don't think there's a fourth category, but let me know if there's a fourth category that you fall into. Tell me your responses in the comments below. I can't wait to hear your responses and to learn more about my audience. Back to the video. Moving on to the black magic craft method of black paint and Mod Podge. Fun fact, I just recently watched a black magic craft video where Jeremy said he doesn't really do this anymore, which I think is so funny just because every other crafter references him in their videos because of this awesome priming method. I took this really old green paint that I'm trying to use up and slapped it on everywhere. This took a couple coats, but I loved how this green paint kind of popped out against the darker recesses of this build. Again, it looks a little messy right now, but I was so excited with how this was coming out. I love grim, dark, and gritty and industrial with neon colors. I feel like a lot of people do who do these types of builds. It just looks really fun. I painted up the pipes with a red copper color and some of the panels as well. Love how that came out. I also used a different metallic, just, a normal gunmetal type of metallic for everything else. I've most certainly said this before, but I think what I love about post-apocalyptic or just otherwise dilapidated kind of terrain with heavy rust and weathering is that it's really forgiving. You don't have to have a perfect paint job. It kind of looks better when you don't. Next up is one of my favorite steps, adding rust. With this build, I decided to try a new technique. I took a tweezer and a little bit of sponge and just sponged the rust on. I see people do this a lot with mini painting, and I do think it's a valid technique, but I found it just wasn't fast enough. Maybe I'm just impatient, I don't know. I didn't show it much on camera, but what I ended up doing was taking this kind of wiry brush and just slapping it on, and it actually had a wicked awesome effect. You can see more of that in the full build of this in my previous video, but highly recommend checking that out. It's not as evident on the tank, but it is such a cool technique, and I'm gonna be doing it from now on. As you can see here, I have two different Vallejo effects paints. I didn't capture any of the galvanic corrosion on camera, but that just added a really nice rusty effect on top of the darker rust. You can see some lighter orange patches. I also added that verdigris on the copper pipes you can see in this shot. Last step is adding all that beautiful greenery and vegetation. And when I say beautiful, I mean, I think it's beautiful, but it's supposed to look like an overgrown, kind of gritty, abandoned building. My typical method for doing flock like this that is supposed to kind of look like moss is to just add a bunch of flock. Here I have a few different colors, mostly green, and mix it with some PVA glue and water until you have a sort of paste like you see me applying to the tank here. It's super easy, super effective, and dries super hard and durable. Thank you so much for watching. I am constantly impressed and humbled by the support my channel has been getting since I started this channel in April. I want to keep doing this for a long time. If you agree and want to support me, all I ask at this time is to subscribe if you feel so inclined and you like the content I'm putting out. Give this video a like, leave a comment letting me know what you liked about it, what you want me to do next, all the classic YouTube stuff. Honestly, even just watching this video to the end and perhaps sharing it with someone who you think might like it is a huge help and probably the best way to support the channel. And stay tuned for my next video coming out soon. Here's the final reveal.